The great hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 47 different species sat in their designated areas, all eyes focused on the crystal figure standing at the center podium. Ambassador Velther of the Corvani Empire had called. An emergency session, something that had not happened in over 300 years. Captain Minho Kim shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The human delegation was small, just 5 people representing their entire species in this vast galaxy. Beside him, Commander Jaiwan Park checked her datapad for the 3rd time, trying to understand why they had been summoned so urgently. The humans had only joined the Galactic Council 6 months ago. They were still learning the rules. Velther's crystalline body caught the light from the chamber's ceiling, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. His species was ancient, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. When the Corvani spoke, others listened. But today, something was different. The ambassador's usual calm was gone, replaced by what looked like fear. Fellow members of the council, Velther began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. I stand before you today to deliver a warning about our newest members, the humans. Minho felt his stomach drop. What had they done wrong? The human exploration and diplomatic missions had been peaceful. They had followed every protocol, respected every boundary. Commander Jiwan's hand moved to her communication device, ready to contact Earth if needed. 3 weeks ago, Velther continued, my people encountered a human vessel near the Korva system. The ship was called the Resilient, and it carried a crew of 12 humans on a mapping mission. This should have been a routine first contact situation. The ambassador paused, his crystal form seeming to dim slightly. The humans were invited to visit our primary research facility on Korva Prime. We wanted to show them our most advanced technology, as is customary with new species. They were polite, curious, and seemed impressed by our achievements. Around the chamber, representatives from various species nodded. This was normal procedure. New members were always given tours to help them understand their place in the galactic community. But then, Velther's voice grew quieter. Disaster struck. Our main fusion reactor began to fail. This was not supposed to happen. Our technology is thousands of years old, tested and proven. But somehow, a cascade failure began that would lead to a complete meltdown. Engineer Hyun-Woo Lee, sitting in the human section, leaned forward. He had worked on fusion reactors back on Earth and knew how dangerous they could be. The reactor had maybe 30 minutes before total failure, Velther continued. Our best engineers, beings who had studied these systems for centuries, told us there was no solution. The facility would have to be evacuated. Nearly 8,000 Corvani would lose their lives in the explosion that would follow. The chamber was completely silent now. Even species that normally whispered among themselves during speeches were paying attention. The humans heard about our problem, Velther said, his voice now barely above a whisper. They asked if they could help. My people thought this was polite, but meaningless. How could a species that had only recently achieved spaceflight help? With technology they had never seen before? Velther moved closer to the center of the chamber, his crystal body now pulsing with a nervous energy. The human engineer, a young male named Hyun-Woo Lee, looked at our reactor for less than 10 minutes. Then he started asking for materials. Not advanced components or rare elements, but simple things. Metal strips, basic tools, some kind of adhesive compound. My engineers thought he had lost his mind. In the human section, Hyun-Woo felt hundreds of alien eyes turning toward him. He had not expected his name to be mentioned in front of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. But we gave him what he asked for, Velther continued. What choice did we have? Our own experts had given up. We watched as this human began to work on our reactor with tools that belonged in a basic workshop, not an advanced research facility. The ambassador's form brightened suddenly, as if he was reliving a moment of shock. He did not just repair the reactor. He improved it, using materials that should not have worked. Following principles that our scientists did not understand, he created a solution that was both simple and brilliant. The reactor did not just stabilize. It began running more efficiently than it had in decades. Murmurs began to spread through the chamber. Representatives turned to each other, whispering in dozens of different languages and communication methods. But that was only the beginning, Belther said, raising his voice to regain attention. While their engineer worked on the reactor, the other humans helped with the evacuation. They carried our people through corridors filled with radiation that should have killed them. They worked for hours in conditions that would have stopped any other species. The Corvani ambassador began pacing, something his people rarely did in formal settings. When it was over, we asked them how they had done it. How had they solved the problem that had defeated our best minds? How had they survived in an environment that should have been lethal? Do you know what they told us? Velther stopped pacing and faced the human delegation directly. They said it was normal. They said that when people need help, you find a way to help them. They said that impossible was just another word for something that had not been figured out yet. The chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had never spoken to each other before were suddenly comparing notes about their own encounters with humans. I have lived for over 2,000 years, Velther announced, his voice cutting through the noise. My species has been part of this council since its founding. We have seen the rise and fall of civilizations. We have witnessed wars that lasted, centuries and peace treaties that endured for millennia. He paused again, letting his words sink in. Never, in all that time, have I encountered a species like humanity. They do not just adapt to problems. They refuse to accept that problems cannot be solved. They look at the impossible and see only a challenge waiting to be overcome. Captain Mignot finally found his voice. Ambassador Velther, with respect, what exactly are you warning the council about? We have done nothing aggressive. We seek only friendship and cooperation. Velther turned his ancient gaze toward the human captain. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of his long experience. Captain Kim, I am not warning the council about human aggression. I am warning them about human capability. Your species does not know the word impossible. You do not accept limitations that every other species considers absolute. You solve problems by changing the rules of what is possible. The ambassador's crystal form pulsed brighter as he delivered his final warning. If humans ever decide that we are their enemy, if your species ever goes on what you call a rampage, nothing in this galaxy could stop you. Not our technology, not our numbers, not our ancient wisdom, because you would find a way to win that none of us could predict or prepare for. The Great Hall fell silent once more. In that silence, the galaxy began to understand that they had welcomed something unprecedented into their midst. Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never be the same. 3 months had passed since Velther's warning to the Galactic Council. Most species had dismissed his concerns as the fears of an old civilization afraid of change. But the Nexari hegemony had listened carefully to every word. The Nexari were warriors by nature and tradition. Their empire had grown through conquest and superior military technology. They believed that strength was the only truth that mattered in the galaxy. When they heard about humans who could supposedly accomplish the impossible, they decided to test this claim for themselves. Colonel Taeyong-yoon stood on the observation deck of the Shin Seoul colony, watching the morning sun rise over the farming settlements below. The colony was home to 200,000 humans, most of them families who had come here seeking a peaceful life among the stars. It was exactly the kind of target the Nexari would choose for their test. Sir, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, Lieutenant Yoonji Choi announced from the communications station. Her voice was steady, but Taeyong could hear the concern underneath. 15 ships, Nexare configuration. They are taking up positions around the colony. Taeyong had been expecting this. Intelligence reports had suggested the Nexari were planning some kind of operation in human space. The official word was that it would be a training exercise, but everyone knew better. Send a message to all ships, Taeyong ordered. Standard diplomatic greeting. Ask about their intentions and offer any assistance they might need. The response came back within minutes. The Nexari commander claimed they were conducting military exercises in international space and would be finished within 12 hours. It was technically legal, but everyone understood the real message. The Nexari wanted to see how humans would react to pressure. Scout Dong-Luk Nam was monitoring the situation from his post in the outer sensor array when he noticed something strange. Colonel, I am getting unusual readings from the Nexari ships. Their cloaking systems appear to be malfunctioning. What kind of malfunction? Yunji asked, pulling up the sensor data on her screen. They are leaking exotic matter, Dong-Yuk replied, his voice growing more concerned as he studied the readings. The particles are being carried by solar wind directly toward the colony. Taeyong felt his blood turn cold. Exotic matter was used in advanced cloaking technology, but it was highly toxic to most forms of life. A small amount would cause sickness. A large amount would kill everything it touched. How much are we talking about? Taeyong asked. Dong-Yuk's fingers flew over his instruments, calculating the rate of leak and the projected path of the contamination. When he looked up, his face was pale. At current rates, the exotic matter will reach lethal concentrations in the colony atmosphere within 6 hours. Everyone here will be dead by nightfall. The command center fell silent. This was no longer a military exercise or a test of human resolve. It was a potential extinction event for the entire colony. Are the Nexari aware of the leak? Yunji asked. Negative, Dong-Yuk replied. Their sensors are not calibrated to detect this type of failure. They have no idea they are about to commit genocide. Taeyong's mind raced through the options. They could contact the Nexari and warn them about the leak, but that would take time they did not have. The alien ships would need to shut down their cloaking systems and retreat to a safe distance, a process that could take hours. By then, it would be too late. They could evacuate the colony, but moving 200,000 people off-world in 6 hours was impossible with their current resources. Even if they started immediately, most of the population would still be here when the toxic cloud arrived. Sir, Yunji said quietly, what are your orders? Taeyong looked out at the colony below, where families were going about their morning routines, unaware that death was approaching from the stars above. Children were walking to school. Farmers were tending their crops. Normal people living normal lives, trusting that someone would keep them safe. Something changed in that moment. Taeyong felt it happen, like a switch being thrown in his mind. The careful, diplomatic approach that humans had been using since. Joining the galactic community suddenly seemed irrelevant. These were his people down there, and nothing was going to harm them. Signal all defense stations, he ordered, his voice taking on a tone that Yunji had never heard before. Emergency protocols are now in effect. Contact every ship, every shuttle, every piece of equipment we have. I want everything that can fly prepared for immediate deployment. Sir, what about the Nexari fleet? Yunji asked. The Nexari fleet is about to learn why Vel-Thur warned the Council about humans. Taeyong replied. Over the next hour, something remarkable happened in the Shin Sol system. Civilian cargo haulers were rapidly converted into evacuation ships, using equipment that had never been designed for such modifications. Mining vessels had their drilling equipment replaced with makeshift weapon systems. Even personal shuttles were pressed into service, carrying supplies and personnel with modifications that should have been impossible to complete so quickly. Dong-Yuk, coordinated the civilian evacuation with a precision that amazed even himself. He found himself calculating flight paths and cargo capacities in his head, organizing the movement of 200,000 people with resources that should have been completely inadequate for the task. But the most remarkable transformation was in Tae-young himself. The careful, measured officer who had been trained in diplomatic protocols was gone. In his place was someone who saw problems not as limitations, but as challenges to be overcome through pure determination and creative thinking. "Sir, the Nexari are demanding to know why we are mobilizing our defenses," Yoonji reported. "They are claiming we are violating the terms of their exercise. Tell them they have 30 minutes to shut down their cloaking systems and retreat to minimum safe distance," Tae-young replied. "After that, we will shut them down ourselves." "But sir, they have 15 warships. We have maybe 20 defensive platforms and a handful of converted civilian vessels." Tae-young smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Lieutenant, you are thinking like a member of the galactic community. Today, we think like humans." The battle that followed would become legendary in galactic military history, though very few beings would ever understand how it was possible. The humans did not fight according to any recognized tactical doctrine. Instead, they used strategies that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Mining ships equipped with industrial cutting lasers proved surprisingly effective against military-grade hull armor. Cargo haulers loaded with metallic ore became kinetic weapons that could punch through energy shields. Most remarkably, human pilots seemed to anticipate Nexari movements before they were made, coordinating their attacks with a precision that appeared almost supernatural. Within 4 hours, 3 Nexari warships had been captured, and the rest were in full retreat. The exotic matter leak had been contained, and the colony was safe. But the most impressive achievement was not the military victory. It was that throughout the entire battle, the evacuation had continued without pause. By the time the fighting ended, nearly half the colony's population had been safely moved to temporary shelters, a logistical achievement that should have been impossible. The Nexari commander, now a prisoner aboard his own ship, demanded to speak with Tae-young. When they met in the captured vessel's bridge, the alien officer asked the question that was burning in his mind. "How did you do it? Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your numbers were smaller. Your ships were not even designed for combat, yet you defeated us completely. How is this possible?" Tae-young looked at the defeated commander and gave him the same answer that Hyun-woo Lee had given the Corvani engineers. When people need help, you find a way to help them. When someone threatens your home, you find a way to stop them. Impossible is just another word for something that has not been figured out yet. The news of the Nexari defeat spread quickly through galactic communication networks. Species that had dismissed Velther's warnings began to reconsider their position. The humans had not just survived a test of their resolve. They had passed it in a way that defied every known rule of military engagement. And in the depths of space, other civilizations began to watch humanity with new eyes, wondering what this strange new species might do next. The emergency alert reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. The Void Swarm had returned. Fleet Admiral Song Jin-oh received the message while reviewing supply reports at the human naval headquarters on Luna Station. He had read about the Void Swarm in the historical archives, but like most beings in the galaxy, he had hoped never to see them in person. The mechanical entities from the darkness between stars appeared roughly every 1,000 years, and when they came, entire civilizations could fall. Dr. Yuna Kong was in her laboratory studying captured Nexari technology when the alert reached her. As humanity's leading expert on alien systems, she would be needed at the Crisis Coordination Center immediately. She gathered her research and headed for the fastest transport available, The coordination center was located on Nexus Prime, the neutral world where the Galactic Council maintained its emergency response facilities. By the time Sungjin and Yuna arrived, representatives from 37 species were already present, their faces showing various expressions of fear and determination. The briefing was delivered by General Vekmer of the Draconi Military Union, a species known for their strategic thinking and battlefield experience. The holographic display showed the current situation in stark detail. 17 star systems are under attack, Vekmer announced, his scaled form standing rigid at attention. The Void Swarm has deployed approximately 2 million mechanical units across multiple fronts. Their objective appears to be the complete harvesting of all organic life in the affected systems. The display changed to show recorded footage from the first attacks. The Void Swarm machines were unlike anything in the current galaxy. They moved with perfect coordination, their dark hulls absorbing most energy weapons, while their own attacks could slice through the strongest known defenses. Based on historical records, we estimate the campaign will require 3 to 5 years to complete, Vekmer continued. Standard doctrine calls for consolidated defense of key systems while maintaining strategic retreat positions. We will need to evacuate approximately 40 billion beings from the affected areas. Murmurs of agreement came from around the room. This was how the Void Swarm had always been defeated in the past. Retreat, defend, and slowly grind down the veil. Enemy through superior numbers and defensive positions. It was a proven strategy that had worked for thousands of years. Sungjin raised his hand. General, what is the current loss rate in the affected systems? Vekmer's expression darkened. Complete sterilization of all organic life within 72 hours of initial contact. No survivors have been recovered from any system that has fallen under full swarm control. And how many beings will die during the 3 to 5 year campaign you described? The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Current projections suggest casualties in the range of 200 billion beings, Vekmer admitted. Yuna stood up from her position in the human delegation. General, may I examine the attack patterns you have recorded? Of course, Doctor. But I should warn you that our best strategic minds have been studying Void Swarm tactics for centuries. Their methods are well understood. Yuna moved to the central display and began manipulating the holographic controls. She pulled up attack data from all 17 systems and began running analysis programs that she had developed for studying alien technology. You said their methods are well understood, she said, without looking away from the display. But understanding and predicting are different things. Have you identified any patterns that might indicate central coordination? The swarm operates through distributed intelligence, replied Dr. Velinash, a Corvani military analyst. Each unit is autonomous. There is no central control to target. That is what everyone assumes, Yuna said, her fingers dancing across the control interface. But look at this. The display changed to show the timing of attacks across all 17 systems. To most observers, it looked like random chaos. But Yuna began highlighting specific patterns, marking the sequence of events with different colors. The initial strikes all occurred within a 6-hour window, but not simultaneously. There is a pattern here. System of 47 was hit first, then systems B-23 and C-88 exactly 37 minutes later, then D-15 and E-90 after another 41 minutes. Sungjin moved closer to the display, studying the patterns that Yuna was revealing. You think there is some kind of coordination signal being passed between systems? More than that, Yuna replied, her excitement growing as she uncovered more data. I think there are specific units that are directing the overall strategy. Look at this. She highlighted certain machines in the recorded battles, marking them with bright red indicators. These units never engage in direct combat, but they always position themselves in locations that optimize the attack patterns of the other machines. They are not autonomous. They are command nodes. The room erupted in discussion. If Una was correct, it would change everything about how the galaxy understood the Void Swarm. General Vekmer studied the display carefully. Even if you are correct, Doctor, these command nodes are located deep within swarm-controlled territory. It would be impossible to reach them with conventional forces. You are right, Sungjin said, stepping forward. Conventional forces could not reach them. But we are not conventional forces. Admiral, with respect, the human fleet consists of fewer than 200 ships. The combined galactic fleet has over 10,000 vessels, and even we cannot penetrate. Swarm defenses. General, you are thinking about this the wrong way, Sungjin replied. You want to fight the swarm using established military doctrine. But the swarm was designed to defeat established military doctrine. They have been studying galactic tactics for thousands of years. Una nodded in agreement. We need to do something they cannot predict or prepare for. Something that has never been tried before. What do you propose? Asked Ambassador Kelter of the Thraki Republic. Sungjin moved to the tactical display and began sketching out a plan that made several representatives gasp in shock. We take a small force of fast ships directly into the heart of swarm territory. No heavy weapons, no massive fleets. Just speed, stealth, and the element of surprise. We hit the command nodes simultaneously across all 17 systems and shut down their coordination network. That is suicide, Vekmer said flatly. The ships you are describing would have to survive in the middle of millions of enemy units. Not survive, Una corrected. Succeed. There is a difference. Within hours, the human plan was approved, mainly because no one had a better idea. Captain Seojin Lim volunteered to lead the strike force, along with pilots Inha Seo and Min Jae-an. They would take modified civilian ships, fast and maneuverable vessels that could be equipped with the specialized equipment Una had designed. The modifications were completed in record time, using techniques that combined human engineering with captured alien technology. The ships were equipped with stealth systems that had never been tested, weapons that should not have worked, and navigation. Systems that operated on principles most species did not understand. The strike began at 0300 Galactic Standard Time. 17 ships launched simultaneously from hidden positions throughout the galaxy, each one heading for a different Void Swarm command node. They used jump routes that had been calculated to avoid swarm patrol patterns flying through regions of space that most species considered too dangerous to enter. What happened next became known as the impossible hour. In 60 minutes, the human strike teams managed to penetrate to the heart of 17 different swarm-controlled systems, locate, and destroy the command nodes, and begin the journey home. But they did more than just destroy the nodes. They captured several intact swarm units and somehow managed to reprogram them. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across 17 star systems, millions of Void Swarm machines suddenly stopped their coordinated attacks and began fighting among themselves. The reprogrammed units turned on their former allies, creating chaos in the enemy ranks. Within 3 weeks, the Void Swarm was completely destroyed, not driven back to the darkness between stars, but actually eliminated as a threat. The machines were either destroyed or captured, their technologies studied and understood for the first time in galactic history. When Captain Seojin returned to Nexus Prime, he was greeted by representatives from every major species in the galaxy. They all wanted to know the same thing. How had humans accomplished in 3 weeks what had previously taken years to achieve? We did not try to fight them the way they expected to be fought, Seojin explained. We looked at the problem and asked ourselves what would work, not what was supposed to work. Then we made it happen. Pilot Inha Seo added her own perspective. The swarm was designed to defeat predictable enemies using predictable tactics. But we are not predictable. We do not follow the rules that other species follow. Minjae An had perhaps the most insightful comment of all. Everyone kept talking about how dangerous and powerful the swarm was. But we just saw them as machines that needed to be turned off. So we figured out how to turn them off. The galaxy began to understand that Veltha's warning had been more accurate than anyone had realized. Humans did not just solve problems through superior technology or greater numbers. They solved problems by refusing to accept that problems. The victory celebration after the Void Swarm defeat lasted only 3 days before the political backlash began. In the shadowed halls of power throughout the galaxy, older civilizations were having uncomfortable conversations about the implications of humanity's rapid rise. Ambassador Jiho Kwan sensed the shift in attitude during his morning briefings at the Galactic Council building on Nexus Prime. Species that had been friendly and cooperative just weeks before were now distant and formal. Meetings that should have been routine were being postponed or canceled entirely. Intelligence Officer Soman Han delivered the news that Jiho had been dreading during their weekly security briefing. Sir, we have confirmed reports of secret meetings between the Thrakari Dominion, the Nexari Hegemony, and at least 12 other major species. They are calling it the Stability Coalition. Jiho set down his coffee and rubbed his temples. He had been expecting something like this, but hoping it would not happen so soon. What are they proposing? Economic containment to start with, Soman replied, consulting her secure datapad. Trade restrictions, technology embargoes, limits on human expansion into new systems. If that does not work, they are discussing more direct action. Military action? The documents we have intercepted suggest they would frame it as peacekeeping. Operations. Protecting galactic stability from an unpredictable new species. Jiho stood and walked to the window overlooking the central plaza of Nexus Prime. Below, beings from dozens of species went about their daily business, most of them unaware that their leaders were planning humanity's isolation and possible destruction. Have we tried diplomatic solutions? Dr. Yunwoo Park has been sharing human technology freely with anyone who asks. Trade Representative Dayun Kim has offered unprecedented economic partnerships. Cultural Attach Hosiak Chang has organized exchange programs with 17 different species. Nothing seems to be working. Jiho nodded grimly. He had authorized all of those initiatives, hoping that openness and generosity would ease the growing tensions. But fear was a powerful motivator, and the older species were very afraid of what humanity represented. The first sign of open hostility came 2 weeks later. A human medical frigate carrying supplies to help combat a plague outbreak in the Corva system was destroyed by what appeared to be a mechanical failure. But the investigation conducted by Captain Seojin Lim revealed evidence of sabotage using Thrakari weapons technology. When the evidence was presented to the Galactic Council, the Thrakari representative claimed it was a false flag operation designed to justify human aggression. The accusation was absurd, but enough species supported it to prevent any official action. That night, something fundamental changed in human behavior throughout the galaxy. Engineer Myung-ho Shin was working late in his laboratory on Luna Station when he received a message from Admiral Song-jin. The orders were simple but unprecedented. Reverse engineer and improve every piece of alien technology that humanity had encountered. There were no limitations on methods or resources. Sir, Myung-ho said during his secure communication with the Admiral, this will take years with our current capabilities. You have 6 weeks, Sung-jin replied. Use whatever you need. Recruit whoever you want. The safety of our species may depend on it. Similar orders went out to every human facility in the galaxy. Dr. Yuna Kong began analyzing void swarm technology using methods that had never been attempted before. Military coordinator Heron Cho started developing tactical strategies that seemed to anticipate enemy movements. Before they were made, the transformation was remarkable and disturbing to outside observers. Humans who had been polite and cooperative. Members of the galactic community suddenly became focused and determined in ways that seemed almost inhuman. The economic blockade began exactly as Soman Han had predicted. Trade routes to human systems were restricted. Technology transfers were suspended. Banking systems that served human colonies experienced mysterious technical difficulties. But instead of weakening humanity, the blockade seemed to make them stronger, human. Merchants began appearing in systems they should not have been able to reach, using jump routes that were not on any known star charts. Their ships moved through space in patterns that defied conventional understanding of hyperspace navigation. When Thrakari patrol fleets tried to intercept human vessels, they found themselves chasing ghosts. Ships would appear on sensors, then vanish without a trace. Human traders would arrive at their destinations with cargo that should have been impossible to transport through the blockade. Most disturbing to the coalition leadership was the individual performance of human personnel. Engineers like Myung-Ho Shin were solving technical problems that had stumped alien experts for centuries. Pilots were flying ships through asteroid fields and gravitational anomalies that should have been impossible to navigate. Dr. Che-Yung Hong, working in a research facility in the Outer Rim, discovered something that changed everything. While analyzing the psychological profiles of humans working in high-stress situations, she found that human performance actually improved under pressure in ways that violated known biological principles. It is as if humans become more than human. When they are threatened, she reported in her classified findings, their cognitive abilities increase, their physical performance exceeds normal parameters, and they begin solving problems using methods that should not work. The coalition's plans began to fall apart within days of implementation. The blockade that was supposed to strangle human expansion instead seemed to accelerate it. Restrictions that should have limited human capabilities were being overcome through methods that no one could explain or predict. Ambassador Velther requested a private meeting with the coalition leadership. The ancient Corvani had been watching the situation develop with growing alarm. "You are making the same mistake I warned you about," he told the assembled representatives. "You are trying to defeat humans using conventional methods. But humans are not a conventional species." General Vekmer, now serving as the coalition's military coordinator, disagreed. "We have superior technology, greater numbers, and the advantage of experience." "How can they possibly overcome those advantages?" "Because they do not accept that those are advantages," Velther replied. "When you have superior technology, they build something better using materials you never considered. When you have greater numbers, they find ways to make numbers irrelevant. When you have experience, they use inexperience as a weapon by doing things you never expected." The final proof of Velther's warning came when the coalition attempted to establish quarantine zones around human space. Military fleets from 8 different species moved to secure strategic positions, planning to gradually tighten the restrictions until humanity was completely isolated. The human response was swift and decisive. Admiral Kyung-Min Song coordinated a defense that seemed to be everywhere at once. Human ships appeared in systems they should not have been able to reach, using tactics that made no sense according to established military doctrine. But the most shocking development was not the military response. It was the civilian response. Human colonies that should have been cut off from supplies and support not only survived, but began to thrive. They developed new technologies, established new trade routes, and created solutions to problems that the coalition had assumed would be insurmountable. Engineer Nari Yu, working on a frontier colony that was supposed to be starving, instead developed a new form of energy production that made the settlement completely self-sufficient. Her methods violated several fundamental principles of physics, but they worked perfectly. The blockade collapsed within 6 weeks. The quarantine zones became meaningless when human ships began appearing behind coalition lines. The military containment failed when human forces demonstrated capabilities that should not have existed. But the most demoralizing aspect for the coalition was not their military defeat. It was the realization that humans had accomplished all of this while continuing to offer friendship and cooperation to anyone who wanted it. Ambassador Jiho Kwan delivered the final message to the disbanded coalition leadership. "We did not want this conflict," he said to the assembled representatives. "We offered you partnership, trade, cultural exchange, and mutual support. You chose to see us as a threat instead of an opportunity. But we are not your enemies," he continued. "We never were. The only threat we represent is to the idea that problems cannot be solved, that limitations cannot be overcome, and that the impossible must remain impossible." As the coalition members returned to their home systems to explain their failure to their governments, the galaxy began to understand a new reality. Humanity had not conquered them through superior force. They had won by refusing to accept defeat, by finding solutions where none should have existed, and by treating the impossible as merely another problem to be solved. The older species began to realize that Velther had been right all along. When humans went on a rampage, nothing could stop them. But their rampage was not about destruction or conquest. It was about making the impossible possible and changing the fundamental rules of what could be achieved in the galaxy. 6 months after the collapse of the Stability Coalition, the galaxy had settled into a new rhythm. The emergency sessions and crisis meetings had been replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history: species calling for human assistance. With problems they could not solve themselves, Admiral Kyung-min Song stood in the command center of the human flagship Determination, reviewing the morning's requests for aid. The list had grown longer every day since the coalition's defeat. Today alone, there were 17 different crises that various species wanted human help to resolve. Researcher Nari Yu worked beside him, her attention focused on the technical specifications of each request. Her team had developed a system for evaluating which problems were truly impossible and which were simply difficult. The distinction had become important as more species began to understand what humans could accomplish. "What do we have today?" Kyung-min asked, settling into his command chair. "A star system where the primary sun is becoming unstable," Nari replied, reading from her datapad. "The Vorthan Republic says their best scientists predict total collapse within 2 years. They want to know if we can stabilize it. Can we?" "Probably." Dr. Cheung Hong thinks she has a solution using modified void swarm technology combined with some theoretical work from our fusion research teams. Kyung-min nodded and moved to the next item. "What else?" The Nexari have requested assistance with a terraforming project that has been stalled for 30 years. They say the atmospheric processors keep failing due to unexpected chemical interactions. And engineer Myung-ho Shin thinks he can fix it in about 3 weeks. He says the problem is that they are trying to force the atmosphere to change instead of working with its natural properties. The list continued. A species whose homeworld was dying from ecological collapse. Another whose colonies were being threatened by gravitational anomalies that made space travel impossible. A civilization that had lost the ability to manufacture critical medical supplies and was facing a population crisis. Each problem was supposedly impossible to solve. Each one represented a challenge that had defeated the best minds of ancient civilizations. And each one was being addressed by humans who saw impossible as just another word for something that had not been figured out yet. But the most significant request came at the end of the list. Ambassador Velther had asked for a private meeting with human leadership. The old Corvani wanted to discuss something that he claimed would change humanity's understanding of their place in the galaxy. The meeting took place aboard the Determination, in a conference room that had been specially designed to accommodate representatives from multiple species. Velthur's crystalline form seemed more vibrant than usual as he settled into the chair that had been prepared for him. "Admiral Song Dr. Yu," he began, his ancient voice carrying a weight of knowledge accumulated over millennia. "I have asked for this meeting because it is time you understood the truth about your species." Captain Seung-ho Bae, who had been included in the meeting due to his experience with impossible situations, leaned forward with interest. "What truth, Ambassador?" Velthur's crystal body pulsed with a soft light as he prepared to reveal information that his species had kept secret for thousands of years. "My people have existed for over 12,000 years, he said. In that time, we have encountered hundreds of species, witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations, and studied the patterns of galactic evolution. Every few millennia, something extraordinary happens. A species emerges that does not follow the established rules of biological and technological development. They appear to be ordinary, but they possess capabilities that transform everything around them." Nari looked up from her notes. "You are talking about humans?" "I am. Talking about what we call catalyst species," Velthur replied. "Humans are not the first we have encountered, but you may be the most remarkable." The conference room fell silent as the implications of this statement sank in. Previous catalyst species have usually focused their abilities in specific areas. Velthur continued. The Zethkari could manipulate matter at the molecular level, but were limited to physical sciences. The ancient Morgon could predict future events with perfect accuracy, but could not change them. Humans are different. You do not specialize, you adapt. You take impossible situations and make them possible through methods that change depending on what is needed. Admiral Kyungmin asked the question that everyone was thinking. What happened to the previous catalyst species? They transcended, Velthur replied simply. When their work in this galaxy was complete, they moved beyond physical existence to explore higher dimensions of reality. But humans show no signs of transcendence. Instead, you seem determined to remain here and continue solving impossible problems for anyone who needs help. Dr. Cheung Hong had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. Ambassador, are you saying that humans are destined to leave this galaxy behind? I am saying that you have a choice, Velthur replied. Previous catalyst species eventually grew beyond the need for physical existence. But you appear to be choosing a different path. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert. Captain Seung-ho's communication device activated, displaying an urgent message from the Outer Rim territories. Sir, we have a situation in the Corvani system, the voice reported. Something is happening to the star that we have never seen before. Local scientists are calling it a complete stellar inversion. The sun is collapsing in on itself, but instead of forming a black hole, it appears to be creating some kind of spatial rift. Velthur's crystal form brightened suddenly. That is impossible. Stars do not behave that way. Admiral, Nari said, already pulling up sensor data on her portable display. The readings we are getting suggest that space-time itself is being torn apart. If this continues, it could affect the entire sector. Kyungmin stood up immediately. How long do we have? Unknown, Seung-ho replied, but the effects are accelerating. We estimate maybe 72 hours before the situation becomes irreversible. Velthur looked at the humans with an expression that might have been amazement on a crystalline face. This is exactly what I was trying to explain. Any other species would be evacuating the sector and hoping the damage does not spread. You are ready, planning to fix it. Of course we are, She-young replied, as if this was the most natural thing in the galaxy. People live in that sector. If we do not fix this, they will die. But how can you fix something that violates the fundamental laws of physics? Nari was already working on preliminary calculations. We figure out new laws of physics. Or we find a way to convince the universe to follow the old ones again. The mission to repair the Corvani star became the most ambitious project humanity had ever undertaken. It required technologies that did not exist, theoretical knowledge that had never been developed, and cooperation between human teams working across multiple dimensions of space-time.engineer. Myung Ho Shin designed a device that could theoretically stabilize the spatial rift, but it would need to be powered by the controlled collapse of 3 separate black holes. Dr. Yuna Kong figured out how to create those black holes using modified void swarm technology and raw stellar material. Captain Sung Ho led the mission to place the stabilization device directly into the heart of the collapsing star, a journey that required traveling through regions of space where the normal laws of physics had stopped working. The mission succeeded, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of simply repairing the damage, the humans managed to transform the dying star into something entirely new. The spatial rift became a stable gateway that allowed instantaneous travel between distant regions of the galaxy. When the project was complete, representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness the impossible made real. The star that should have died had become a bridge between worlds, opening new possibilities for exploration and communication that no one had imagined. Ambassador Velther spoke for many when he addressed the human team after their return. Now, I understand why you are different from previous catalyst species. You do not transcend physical reality because you prefer to transform it. You do not leave problems behind because you enjoy solving them. Dr. Chae-Yung Hong smiled at the ancient being. Ambassador, we do not see problems and solutions. We see situations that need attention and people who need help. The rest is just engineering. But you realize that your actions are changing the fundamental nature of this galaxy? You are making impossible things routine. You are teaching other species to think beyond their limitations. Good, Admiral Kyung-min said firmly. A galaxy is big enough for everyone to accomplish impossible things. We are happy to show others how to get started. As news of the Corvani Star project spread throughout the galaxy, the new reality became clear to everyone. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through superior force or advanced technology. They had transformed it by refusing to accept that. Problems could not be solved. Species that had once feared human capabilities now sought them out as partners and teachers. The impossible had become possible, not through magic or transcendent power, but through the simple human belief that every problem had a solution waiting to be discovered. Veltha's warning to the Galactic Council had proved prophetic.